I had somebody ask me about when it comes to creek crossings, getting your horse to cross that creek without having an explosive reactions. When it comes to an obstacle for a horse that is scary or you get a refusal, a lot of people's first instincts for a horse that refuses to go across the creek or whatever. I don't have a creek here on the property. I have a solid sheet of ice out in my working pen, and I have this tarp. So we have this tarp resembling our water crossing today. But a lot of people's first initial reactions when it comes to something scary, so let your horse sniff on it. Of course, she's not going to be a very good example for you guys today, but to let your horse sniff on it, let him examine it, touch it, all that stuff. And as soon as that horse just looks at it and examines it, a lot of people's reaction is to bind that horse up, get short on the reins, get tight on the legs, just take a hold of that horse in their body and force them forward. And they really just don't give that horse an opportunity to do anything but cross that thing. And when they cross, generally what happens with a lot of people, Phil was a prime example there for you guys, but what happens with a lot of people is when they get to that point of that horse stepping into that water, stepping on that tarp, that horse will blow in some way or another. You've got a lot of horses that will lunge across the creek. You'll get horses that will jump straight up. You'll get horses that buck. You'll get horses that'll rear, spin, and run the other way. You get a violent reaction out of it. Well, what happens, and I've talked about this in previous videos, what happens when you're binding that horse up and you start doing this, you take a hold of their head so they have no option and the only escape that they have is to go forward, and you're kicking them and you're pushing them and you're adding that pressure as you're creating a pressure pot within that horse. That pressure has to be released. It starts to be released with forward movement, but there's still a built up amount of pressure in that horse. So when they touch that thing that they are weary of, you have a blowout. And so with a horse, what a lot of people don't understand is when it comes to a situation like this with a horse that is having issues with an obstacle because they're scared of it. Like I said, a lot of people want to force that horse forward. They just go, it's fine, it's not scary, fine, get over it, get over it, get over it. See, it's not scary, it's not scary. And as soon as that horse wants to look down and look at it, they give that horse their head and they let that horse smell it and stuff like that, paw it, whatever it may be. What they do by doing that is they draw all of that horse's attention to that object that they're scared of. And you do not want to draw a horse's attention to the object that they are scared of. You want your horse's attention on you. The other day I did a podcast talking about desensitizing versus teaching your horses to think before they react. And so what I'm about to show you guys is a prime example of how to go about teaching your horses to think before they react. And so you got a horse that, even though Phil here walked up and she walked over it, if you got a horse that is weary of something like this, that is scared of it, they're going to, instead of having a reaction to it, because all you've done with them in the past is throw stuff at them and say, don't be scared. And when that horse stops reacting, you go, all right, good, you're not scared anymore. You don't teach your horse anything. You just teach them to stand and tolerate and vapor lock. And so what you want to do is teach your horses to stop, know you as a leader, look to you as a leader, and then respond based off of the information that you provide them. And by information, I mean cues. So in this instance, we're going to pretend Phil is real scared of this tarp. So instead of coming up here and going, hey, pay attention to the tarp, get over the tarp, get over it, don't be scared, don't be scared, don't be scared, don't be scared, go, 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 and building up that pressure and losing all of that horse's attention and focus off of us to the thing that they're scared of, we're going to work on getting that horse's attention on us and off of that object. So some horses in this instance probably wouldn't even get this close to the tarp. If I told her to go right over that tarp, she would. But say you got a horse right here, and this is a good exercise. If you don't have a creek crossing at home, if you don't have something, taking a tarp or something that a horse is weary of, again, referring to that podcast that I did, you don't need a butt ton of all these little dicky-doos and stuff like that to teach a horse to think before they react. Simple situation like this with a tarp that covers my hay that I already have is going to get the job done. So what I want to do is I want to create an instance here where I'm getting my horse's attention back on me, getting them in control of me. And so when I'm doing this, we're going to pretend that Phil is scared of that tarp. And every time I turn towards that tarp, let's say she's kind of like, ooh, looking at it, like a horse does, or even shies away from it. I'm going to ignore that. And I'm just going to go, no, let's work on kicking that hind end out. Let's get some bend here, bend around my leg, bend around my body, give to my hands. Let's give them shoulders. Let's, right here when I'm riding her, between my seat, my legs, and my hands, I'm not giving her an opportunity to stop and think about that scary object, that obstacle. I want her to focus on me and what I'm asking her to do. And then while we're doing this, I'm going to get up close to that tarp and take a step on it and be like, all right, did we have a reaction? Let's say that she did have a reaction there and she kind of jumped. So I'm just going to kind of do more stuff. Hey, let's just keep focusing on me and what I'm asking you to do. So by doing this, this is teaching her that step of stop, focus on me, look to me in that think before you react phase. I'm not pushing her to the point where she's going to have a reaction by blowing backwards or spinning around or, if she starts drawing her attention, really, what's going to tell me before she has a reaction is if I were to walk by here, if she were to, how a horse does, they kind of bend their body and look. If she were to do that, I'd be like, no. And I'd start getting my hands and legs busy again, asking her to do stuff. Get up here. Let's focus on me. Focus on me. Let's not focus on that scary object. And then pretty soon you got a horse that's walking next to it with no issues at all. And they learn that, pretty soon you got a horse just by doing that. You're teaching them, look to me for guidance. Look to me for guidance. Focus on me. What am I telling you to do? What am I telling you to do? It's okay. And then that horse gets confidence in you. They get confidence in themselves. And pretty soon, because they're focusing on you, they forgot about this tarp or the creek crossing or whatever. And that is no different to them than this tree I was circling around. It's no different in their mind because their attention and their focus is on me. And then pretty soon as you're working that horse, you get closer and closer to that object. And when that horse tells you I'm starting to get out of my comfort zone, I'm going to have a reaction, that's when you start, no, don't pay attention to that. Look at me for guidance. Look at me. What am I telling you to do? I'm safe. I'm safe. And so then that horse starts thinking about you again and starts looking to you for guidance. When that object drew their focus away from you, you draw their focus back to you. Say, look to me. And then pretty soon you can have a horse where one of my favorite things is if you have the opportunity is to go up and down a creek crossing or water or something like this and always turn them in towards it. I'm going a little bit longer here on this end so I'm not just whoop whoop, but turn them in towards it because, and then at the same time doing what you did in the past, because that's going to happen right there. That horse is going to step in that water, and when they're focused on you and they step in that water, they kind of have a realization moment that's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Even though this tarp is wrapped around Phil's foot right here, we're not having a reaction. I have never worked with Phil with tarps before. This is the first time. I actually picked her because I've never worked with her on a tarp. I was actually hoping that she would have a reaction. See right here? She's kind of looking weird at it right there because it moved. It got wrapped around her foot and she's like, that's different. I'm not letting her stop and look at it. I got busy with my hands and my legs and I said, no, look to me. And so when we turned back around to look at it, she didn't even look at it. She was like, oh, okay. And so as you work that horse back and forth along that water's edge, when you turn that horse, they'll accidentally kind of step on that water. And then they realize, oh, that wasn't that bad. And then pretty soon you're going to have a horse that, you could go out here. And if that horse starts, when you turn towards that creek crossing or that water or whatever that you're going into, if you turn towards that and you start going towards it and that horse starts drawing their attention to it, again, draw their attention back to you. Look to me for guidance. I'm your safety net. And so then you got a horse that's going to end up walking across it with no issues. And so what happens there too, you want to keep their attention, and then that horse gets more confidence in you. They start looking to you as a leader. They start looking to you for safety. And so even in new situations like today, I have never worked with a tarp with her before in my life. And we had no issues with it. Because she knows the way that I have ridden her in situations that she is weary of something, I've gone, look to me for guidance. Look to me and respond off of what I tell you to do. And then every single time that has happened in the past, she's never gotten hurt. She's never gotten herself in a wreck or anything like that. And so she knows that if she looks to me for guidance as the leader, that she's not going to get hurt. She has full confidence in me, even though we have never walked across the tarp before, that she's going to be fine. That she doesn't need to worry about this tarp. She just needs to worry about the information that I've provided her. And so if you have a horse when you walk up to, like if you're getting to the spot where you're getting ready to walk across something like this, if you have a horse that wants to sniff it like that, Phil, since she's already fine with this, she's obviously not scared of it. It was wrapped around her foot. She drug it. I'm not going to have an issue with her looking down and looking at the tarp. But if you have a horse that is acting weary of this tarp or the creek crossing or whatever obstacle that may be, them dropping their head to look at it, a lot of people are going to go, oh, let them investigate it. Let them see that it's okay. What you're doing there is you're allowing that horse to withdraw their attention from you and put it on something that scares them. They're withdrawing their attention to what makes them confident and feel safe, and putting their attention on something that they are scared of and they feel unsafe about. Get that attention back to you. And so I tell a lot of people, don't let them go down there and sniffing it and play, investigate it for too much. They can look down for a second. If that horse just goes like this and looks back up, that's fine. But if that horse goes down and starts sniffing and stuff like that, you can tell most of the time when that happens with people, when they're trying to get them to cross a water crossing or something like that, that horse gets stiff and they start getting bound up because their attention is on something that makes them scared. And so you got to get that attention back. So generally when a horse drops their head down, I'll, pop that head back up and say, no, focus on me. Focus on your safety net. Focus on the safety net. Focus on your leader, your mentor, your guide, instead of what makes you scared kind of thing. Anyone who, if you've been in a situation where you're scared or something like that, a lot of people's go-to advice is think of something that makes you happy. Get your mind in a place or focus on something that makes you happy or, makes you feel safe. Go to your safe place. And so it's the same thing with horses when it comes to obstacles that are scary. Don't let them focus on the thing that already has them scared. Because when you lose the focus of a horse, lose their attention, they withdraw their attention from their safety net and their leader, which is you. See, with a horse that would be scared of that, I'd pop them up like that and say, hey, no, focus on me. You don't need to sit there and dwell on the scary thing. Dwell on me. But you want your horses to keep their attention on their safety net, which is you. You don't want them to lose that attention. And so doing things like I was doing and just working with that horse. All right, let's get control of your shoulders over here. Let's move your shoulders. Let's, bend your body. Let's kick them hips out. Kick the hips out. Awesome. Let's bend that neck. Let's move those shoulders. All right. I'm doing a lot with my seat, my legs, my hands, everything here, to where if she was scared of this object, she doesn't have the attention span with everything that I'm doing here to have a reaction and focus on it. And if at any point in time I come here and she goes, ooh, I'm going to go, no, look at me, focus on me. I'm your safety net. I'm your leader. I'm your guide. And then pretty soon they're going to realize there's nothing here to worry about. Hey, get off my hands. And not to be scared of that, because they lost their attention on it. They almost forgot that it was even there. And that's what you want to do with your horses. If you are in the situation that you are on the trail and you are wanting to cross, a little creek or something like that, and you haven't had time to work with that with your horse, and you don't have 20 minutes to do what I just did. Everybody's waiting on you. This is something that that when you go home, you're going to have to work on, right? Building that confidence with your horse and looking to you as a leader, thinking before they react. When you go out on the trail, if you are needing to get across that creek crossing and you just don't have the time to mess around with this and everybody's waiting on you and all of that stuff, you can go the method of making a horse cross it, and forcing them across. But what you're going to want to avoid with that when you're doing it is creating that pressure pot, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, to where they're going to have an explosive reaction. You don't want to keep adding pressure. So instead of getting a hold of that horse's face and just, come on, and now you got a horse that's, doing that, creating that pressure, you want to ease that horse across. I recommend to people giving that horse their face, having a loose rein, having your hands out low and wide like this, so that if that horse tips their nose this way like that to maybe dip and try to turn around, you can catch it. You're right there ready to catch that horse when they turn either direction, but you're not on that horse's face creating, binding that horse up. You're allowing them the freedom of movement to go either way, but you're right there ready to catch that horse. You want to coax that horse forward. And when you get to here, that horse is generally, if you get them up to that water's edge, they're generally going to want to drop their head. They can drop their head and look at it for a second, see that it's okay, pick their head back up right away, and then get back to coaxing them across. And you don't want your horse to the point where you're having to kick them across, waylay on that horse. You just kind of want to, if you have to give them some firm kicks, but I don't want to get my horse to the point to where I have to force them across something with my legs. You want them to where they cross it willingly, basically. And so what you want to do is give that horse, pick up your head, hey, and coax them across it. If you have the opportunity when you come to a creek crossing to allow someone else to go first on their horse that does good, that's better. That horse is going to see the confidence. They're herd animals. They're going to follow other horses a lot better. But in this situation, don't let your horse drop their head and dwell on that scary thing. Like I said, keep their attention and their focus on you as their guide and their leader, as their safety net. In that podcast that I talked about earlier, I talk about desensitizing a horse. You don't have to have all these fancy gadgets and gadgets to desensitize a horse to prepare them for the trail. And a lot of times desensitizing, you're never going to tell me, I'm never going to tell anybody, you need to go and desensitize that horse. Not once are you ever going to hear me say to somebody, go and desensitize that horse. You're never going to hear me say that I've done that with my horse. Because desensitizing literally says to take away or dull senses. And you don't want to take away or dull your horse's senses. Your horse's sensitivity is what creates a responsive horse. And if you take that away, you're not going to have a responsive horse. Most of the times, in terms of desensitizing horses too, a lot of people just throw objects at horses until they stop having a reaction and they say that horse has been desensitized. And in that situation, all they have taught their horses to stand and tolerate things. They've not taught them anything outside of just stand and take it. And if you have a horse that just stands and takes it, you don't have a horse that's going to respond to you. So in a situation that you need to have control of that horse, you don't. And it's dangerous. You need to teach your horses to think before they react. And doing things like this with your horses is how you do it. A majority of people that I know that I've, done clinics with and stuff like that in the horse industry, a majority of people's response to getting a horse over this tarp or introducing this tarp to a horse isn't going to be what I just did with my horse. It's going to be to get on the ground, pick up that tarp, and throw it at that horse, and put it on that horse, and touch the horse with it. And when they're having a reaction, just continue to touch them with this tarp, hang it over the top of them, hang it over their back, drag it from the saddle, all of that stuff until that horse stops having a reaction. And in that instance, just like I said, all you're doing is teaching your horse to stand and tolerate. Just by doing what I did with my horse here, I can tell you that, picking up this tarp, she might step up and back away because now it's up in the air, but she's not going to have a reaction to it because I'm her safety net. She might kind of, like this, but we're not going to have a violent reaction from her because I'm this horse's safety net. And if I tell this horse, woo, guess what? She's going to woo and let me touch her with it because of what I did on her back. There wasn't a huge fight. This wasn't a 45-minute long deal of fighting this horse and her getting lathered into a sweat, me getting upset, her dragging me around, her bolting, and all of these explosive reactions until she finally stands there and lets me touch it because she's mentally shut down and she's physically tired. This is just teaching her to go, look at me for guidance. Look to me for support. I got you. And she goes, you got me. And so, like I said at the beginning of this video, I chose Phil for this video specifically because I've never done any tarp work with her. I expected some sort of reaction out of her. I didn't expect a blow up when I asked her the first time, but I expected her to maybe go, ooh, and kind of squirt out or something of the sorts like that. But we got essentially no reaction out of her. The worst reaction we got is after she wrapped it in her foot and dragged it, she turned around and said, oh, that moved. That's all because her entire foundation, all of her training, everything that I've done with her has always been look to me for guidance. Look to me for instruction. I am safe. I am your safety net. I am your leader. And she respects that. And she looks to me for guidance. And she looks to me for safety. And she looks to me for that leadership. And that's how you get a well-rounded horse that you can do stuff like this for the first time and try to make an awesome education video. And she just goes, okay. It makes for difficult instances of making educational videos when your horse doesn't respond the way that you anticipated. So go about teaching your horses to think before they react when it comes to, new obstacles, when it comes to roping off of them, when it comes to poling, when it comes to trail riding, when it comes to, you don't need all of these fancy things to desensitize your horse. I only have this tarp because it covers my hay. All you need is create situations for your horse to where they're going to have to look to you for guidance. And in that situation, you show them how to look to you for guidance, how to look to you as a leader, to think before they react instead of just losing their mind.